Dear listeners, just imagine for a moment. A small child walks alone through the night, trembling, her feet bleeding and her breath weak, as she pushes through thick fog and biting wind at the edge of a cliff. From the pitch-black sky comes a terrible shriek, sharp and inhuman. Then out of the clouds a winged creature descends. Not an angel, not a bird, but something massive, powerful and ancient. The girl stares upward with eyes full of sorrow and fear, and as its claws draw near, she wonders if this is the end of her life, or the beginning of something far more terrifying. What really happened that night? And who is the winged creature that descended from the heavens, carrying secrets of the past? But before we continue with the story, please support this channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support means so much to us and keeps us excited to bring more powerful stories your way. Oh, and don't forget to check in through the comment section. Tell us where you're listening from so we can see how far our stories have traveled. Now let's return to the story. The sky was heavy with clouds, torn and swirling like black cloth. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but no rain fell. Beneath that cursed sky walked a child, no older than 10. Her name was Raya. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn, her face bruised and streaked with ash. But the saddest part of her was her eyes. The eyes of a child who had lost everything. Raya did not know where she was going. 2 nights ago, her village had burned to the ground. There was nothing left but ash and smoke. People whispered that the fire came from the heavens, but no one truly knew. No one believed her when she said she saw it herself. Fire falling from the sky, wings in the smoke, a shadow not of this earth. Now she walked with no purpose, no direction, no home, no family, nothing but silence and her memories. That night the wind grew cold. Raya reached the edge of a cliff that overlooked a dark forest far below. She stood there for a long time, shivering. A thought crept into her mind. If I jump, maybe the pain will finally end. But just then the wind changed. It shifted unnaturally, swirling around her. Then, a shriek tore through the silence. Raya looked up. Her breath caught. A giant eagle, no, something far more majestic, descended from the sky. It was enormous, its wings stretching wider than the trees below. Its feathers shimmered like golden fire, and its eyes blazed with red light, filled with both fury and sorrow. The creature floated downward, slow and powerful, as though descending from a place beyond time. Raya froze. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. The giant talon touched the ground gently, just steps from where she stood. But it didn't strike. Instead, the creature lowered its head, emitting a sound. Not loud but soft, almost like a mother's whisper. Tears welled in Raya's eyes. She raised her hand, trembling. Talon remained still. And then, without warning, the wind lifted her. The eagle took her into the sky. High above the trees. Above the clouds. Into a realm no human had ever reached. They flew for what felt like forever. The world beneath them became small and distant. The stars shimmered close. The mountains became hills. Raya clung tightly, her fear slowly turning to awe. Eventually, they reached a place that defied reality. A floating land above the clouds, surrounded by soft light and endless mist. The eagle landed gently on a stone platform surrounded by sky. Then it spoke. Not with a voice but inside her mind. My name is Arvoxa. I am the guardian of the sky. You do not belong here, child of the earth. But the sky has touched you. And that cannot be ignored. Raya stepped back. Why did you save me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Arvoxa's glowing eyes met hers. Because the fire that destroyed your home did not come from the earth. It came from above. Raya's heart pounded. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. Before Arvoxa could answer, harsh sounds echoed across the sky. The wind shifted violently. Several winged beings approached from the clouds, armed with spears that gleamed like lightning. Their faces were stern, their eyes suspicious. They landed in a circle around Raya and Arvoxa. At the center of them stood a striking woman with wings of jet black and piercing silver eyes. She stepped forward. Arvoxa, why have you brought a human into the sky realm? I saved her, Elora, Arvoxa said calmly. She bears the mark of skyfire. If we turn her away, we blind ourselves to what is happening. Elora's gaze narrowed as she turned to Raya. This child brings danger. And if the fire truly came from our realm, then this is no longer just a human concern. Raya stood silently, her heart pounding. She did not understand their words, but she knew one thing. Her life was changing in ways she could not yet imagine. And that night, in a place no human had ever walked, she fell asleep beneath the wings of the mighty eagle. But as the first light of dawn lit the clouds in gold, something stirred in the shadows of the sky. Plan was taking shape. And the life of the child was already in danger. The sky realm was unlike anything Raya had ever known. It floated high above the earth, far beyond human reach. Hidden within layers of clouds and guarded by winds that obeyed no law but their own. The ground was solid yet soft, warm to the touch, as if it remembered the sun. Trees of silver and gold leaves shimmered with light even in darkness, and rivers flowed like glass, reflecting the stars overhead. Strange birds glided silently through the air, their wings leaving trails of mist. Raya wandered cautiously, her bare feet stepping over glowing moss and stone paths that led to nowhere. She felt small and out of place, like a broken piece in a world that was whole. Her thoughts spun endlessly. Why had Arvoxa saved her? What did the fire from the sky mean? Why did that winged woman, Elora, look at her like she was a threat? As the hours passed, Raya learned that the sky realm was not a kingdom like the ones sung in stories. It was older than that. It was a sanctuary, a refuge built by the guardians, winged beings like Arvoxa, sworn to protect the balance between heaven and earth. They had lived hidden for centuries, watching from above, never interfering. But something had changed. The fire that destroyed Raya's village was not an accident. Arvoxa believed it was a message, or worse, a warning, that the barrier between the human world and the sky was breaking. Despite the warmth and beauty of the sky realm, Raya felt no peace. The others stared at her as she walked by. Their whispers, though soft, carried meaning. She should not be here. She brings danger. Arvoxa has broken the vow. Even the children, smaller winged ones who looked like they barely understood the world, kept their distance. Only one person ever approached her. His name was Kale. He was about Raya's age, though taller, with dark hair and gray wings speckled with white. He did not speak at first. He simply followed her, curious, watching her every move. On the second day he finally said something. You don't belong here. But you're not like other humans, are you? Raya hesitated, unsure whether to answer. I don't know what I am anymore, she replied quietly. Kale tilted his head. That's a good place to start. Over the next few days, Kale showed her the secret places of the sky realm, the floating gardens that bloomed only under starlight, the tower where the winds were born, and the sacred mirror that reflected not your face, but your soul. There Raya saw something strange. When she looked into the mirror, she did not see a little girl. She saw herself surrounded by flames, wings of gold growing from her back, her eyes glowing with power she had never known. She stepped back frightened. Kale looked at her with curiosity. "What did you see?" "I don't want to talk about it." He said nothing more. That night, Raya found Arvoxa perched atop the tallest stone in the realm, his golden feathers glowing beneath the moonlight. She climbed up beside him, knees pulled to her chest. "You said the fire came from above. What does that mean?" Arvoxa turned his head slowly. "There are those among us who believe the time of the guardians is over, that we should rule the earth again, not protect it from afar. They are wrong. But their voices grow louder. Is that what happened to my village?" "Yes." Raya stared at the stars. "Then why save me?" Arvoxa looked at her with deep sadness. "Because you were born at the edge of both worlds. You saw the fire yet you survived. That has meaning. I do not know what it is yet. But I believe. You are more important than you know." A gust of wind passed through them. Below, hidden from sight, Elora stood in the shadows, watching. Her expression was unreadable. The next morning everything changed. Raya woke to shouting. From her place near the sleeping cliffs, she ran to the center of the realm, where a gathering of guardians had formed. Arvoxa stood in the middle, surrounded by dozens of winged figures, some with feathers white as snow, others black as night. Elora stood at the front, voice sharp and commanding. "This is madness," she said. "The child must be returned to the earth. Her presence here violates the ancient order." "She is not just a child," Arvoxa replied. "She carries fire in her blood. If we send her away, we may lose the only chance to stop what's coming. Or we may bring destruction upon ourselves," Elora snapped. The guardians murmured among themselves. Some nodded in agreement with Arvoxa. Others looked away afraid. Raya felt every eye fall on her. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I didn't ask to be brought here. I didn't ask for any of this. But if you send me back, I have nowhere to go." For a moment no one spoke. Then a voice rang out from the back. "She should be tested. If she really bears the fire, let the sky decide." Heads turned. A tall guardian stepped forward. His name was Varen. His feathers were red as blood, his eyes sharp as blades. He had always been quiet, but now his presence demanded attention. "What kind of test?" Arvoxa asked warily. Varen smiled faintly. "There is a storm in the west, born from the very edge of the sky realm. If the girl can walk into it and return unharmed, then she stays. If not, then the wind has spoken." Elora said nothing, but her silence was approval. Arvoxa turned to Raya. "You don't have to do this." Raya looked up at him. Then she looked at the others. The ones who feared her. The ones who doubted her. Then she looked at Kale, who stood silently at the edge, his eyes full of worry. "I'll go," she said. And just like that the decision was made. The next morning she would face the storm. That night, the winds howled louder than usual. Raya stood at the edge of the floating cliff, staring into the distance. Far away she could see it, the storm. A swirling wall of clouds, dark and angry, crackling with lightning. Kale approached her quietly. "You really think you can survive that?" "I don't know," she said honestly. He took something from his pocket, a feather small and gray. "My mother gave this to me before she disappeared in the winds. It's nothing special, but it always made me feel safe." Raya took the feather, holding it tightly. "Thank you." The silence between them was warm. As dawn broke, Raya stood at the edge again. The guardians gathered behind her. Arvoxa said nothing, but his eyes never left her. She took one step forward, then another, and then, She leapt into the storm. The wind hit her like a wall. Lightning tore the sky apart. Rain lashed at her skin like knives. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But she kept walking. One step. Then another. Through pain, through fear, through darkness. She screamed. Not from terror, but from the fire rising inside her. A warmth, a light, a memory. A voice, her mother's voice, calling her name. She saw her village again. Flames. Faces. The sky above. And in that moment, she felt something shift. Her body glowed. The storm parted. And the clouds above began to whisper her name. The storm had not vanished. Had bent. From above, the guardians who had gathered at the edges of the sky realm stared in silence as the dark clouds trembled and swirled in unnatural patterns. The lightning no longer struck at random. It pulsed in waves, circling around the small figure of the girl who dared to step into the eye of it. Raya stood in the very heart of the storm, her body faintly glowing, her hair blown wildly around her face, and in her hand, Kale's gray feather, untouched by the wind. She was not unharmed. Her skin bled from countless cuts, and her body shook from the cold. But she stood. And the storm impossibly listened. Inside that howling chaos, Raya could not hear her own breath. The wind screamed in her ears, but it no longer tore her apart. Instead it spoke in pieces. Broken phrases, echoes, memories not hers. Child of Skyfire. The blood remembers. Return what was stolen. Raya didn't understand. She looked up, her eyes searching the black sky above for something, anything to hold on to. Suddenly a memory emerged. Not her own, yet it flowed through her veins like it belonged there. She saw towers made of cloud and crystal. Floating cities now crumbled into mist. She saw winged warriors fighting against others of their kind. She saw fire erupting from the skies, falling upon earth, and she saw a woman, tall, powerful, cloaked in black feathers, carrying a child wrapped in silver cloth through a portal of wind. The vision passed like lightning, and when it was gone, Raya collapsed to her knees. Then something moved behind her. From within the storm, a shape emerged, towering, shadowed, its wings the color of rust and its eyes deep as an endless night. It was not like Arvoxa. This creature felt ancient, forgotten, as if the storm itself had shaped it from pain and fury. Raya could not run. Her legs would not obey. The creature lowered its head, and its voice entered her thoughts like a blade. You are the lost one. The spark they buried. You are the oath they broke. Raya trembled. Who are you? I am what remains when duty is abandoned, when power is feared, when truth is chained. The being circled her slowly, its talons brushing the clouds. They hid you, the Skyfire child. You are not merely human. Your blood is mixed, flesh of the earth, flame of the heavens. Raya's breath caught. The voice pressed deeper. You were meant to inherit the sky. But they feared your rise. So they cast down your parents. One vanished. The other silenced. No, Raya whispered. That's not true. But even as she denied it, something inside her shifted. The mirror she had looked into. The dreams. The fire. The way the storm parted for her. All of it pointed to one truth. She was not like others. And someone had hidden that truth. I can help you remember, the creature said. But the others will never allow it. They fear what you will become. A sound broke through the storm, Arvoxa's cry. It rang like a bell through the sky. The creature stepped back, wings flaring. They come, it said. They always come too late. Raya looked up, confused. Wait, what am I supposed to do? Who are you really? But the creature only whispered. When the storm comes again, you will choose. And then it was gone, vanished into cloud and silence. Moments later, Arvoxa descended, wings shining like fire against the gray. He wrapped his great talon around Raya, lifting her gently. She had passed the test. But nothing felt like a victory. Back in the sky realm, Raya was given a place of her own, near the quiet gardens where the starlight trees bloomed. Her wounds were healed with strange salves that glowed blue. The guardians no longer looked at her with suspicion. They watched her with silence and fear. Elora did not speak to her again. Varen merely nodded once and vanished for days. Kale visited often. He would sit beside her without speaking, sometimes bringing strange fruits or stories of old battles from the sky archives. But something had changed in Raya. The visions haunted her sleep. Every night, she saw pieces of a life she had never lived. A woman with silver wings. A man whose hands held fire without burning. A promise made before she was born. She began to ask questions. One morning, she cornered Arvoxa near the mirror of breath. Who were my parents? Arvoxa looked down at her with a sorrow too old to carry. You were brought to the earth in secret. The woman who carried you was your mother. She was one of us. But your father was not. What was he? Arvoxa hesitated, then said softly, a human who once touched the sky and lived. Raya stepped back stunned. You mean they loved each other? A guardian and a human. It is forbidden, he said. It breaks the balance. It brings fire and ruin. Raya clenched her fists. That fire already came. He didn't answer. That night, when the realm was silent, Raya sneaked into the Vault of Whispers, an ancient place forbidden to all but the elders. Kale had told her of it once, half in a joke. But now she needed answers. Inside, the walls glowed with windscript. Stories carved into stone that floated mid-air, moving slowly like drifting feathers. Raya walked through them, reading with care. She found her mother's name. Luna. She had been a guardian of the Sky Watch, powerful and wise. But her name ended in silence. No mention of her death, no honor song. It was as if she had been erased. Then she found something hidden, words etched in another language, meant to be unseen. The child is born. Sky and earth in one. If she survives the storm, the balance will shift. Suddenly, Raya felt warmth behind her. Soft glow. She turned. Elora stood there, watching her. I knew you would come here, she said. Raya stepped back. You knew everything, didn't you? Elora's face was unreadable. I fought to keep you out of this place because I feared what you would become. Not because I hated you. But because I loved your mother. Raya froze. I watched her fall from the sky, broken by her own kind. Because of a choice we were never allowed to make. Raya's throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me? Because if you knew too soon you would have burned. The truth has to rise like the wind, not crash like a storm. Raya shook her head. The storm already knows me. Called me the Skyfire child. What does that mean? Elora looked at her for a long time. It means you are the only one who can stop what's coming. Outside, far beyond the edge of the realm, something terrible stirred in the clouds. The creature of the storm had not vanished. It had gathered strength. And as the winds began to shift again, carrying whispers of war, Raya stood at the center of it all, her heart torn between two worlds. And her destiny. No longer waiting in the shadows. The wind was no longer gentle in the sky realm. It scraped at the towers and bent the silver-leaved trees. The guardians no longer soared for joy but flew in silent formations, always watching the horizon, as if they sensed something was coming. The peace that had once flowed through the floating isles had become something brittle, one gust away from shattering. Raya felt it in her bones. She trained alone now, far from the others, near the edge of the realm where the clouds were thickest and the stars hid during the day. Her hands bore the marks of fire, burns that healed in moments but left behind aching memories. Her body had changed. She could run faster. Her sight grew sharper. Her dreams no longer frightened her, though they still came every night like clockwork, whispering of forgotten ruins, voices of ancestors she had never met, and storms that cracked the sky in half. Kale stayed by her side. He said little, but his eyes followed her every move. One morning, as Raya struck a training post with a hand surrounded by blue flame, Kale stepped forward. "You shouldn't keep burning yourself like this." "I need to understand it," she answered. "This fire, it answers me. But I don't know what it wants." Kale lowered his voice. "Maybe it doesn't want anything. Maybe it just is." She turned to him, her face damp with sweat, her breath uneven. "It came from somewhere. I didn't make it." Kale hesitated, then reached into his satchel and pulled out something wrapped in a torn piece of silver cloth. He handed it to her. "What is this?" Raya asked. "I went into the elders' archives while they were in council. I found this. It's your mother's." Raya slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a small crystal pendant. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. As her fingers closed around it, her surroundings faded. The sky disappeared. The wind paused. She stood inside a memory. A great hall carved from clouds and light. Her mother stood tall and fierce, wings like molten silver, eyes the color of thunderclouds. Her father stood beside her, human, but wearing armor that shimmered with guardian metal. Around them figures argued. Voices rose, wings flared. "She cannot be born here," one cried. "You are breaking the first oath," said another. "She is a bridge," her mother shouted. "She will heal the world." Then came a voice from above. "Whoa, final. Then you are no longer one of us." Blade of wind. Scream. Fire. Raya gasped, stumbling back into the present. Kale caught her before she fell. "She was exiled," Raya said, voice shaking. "They cast her out before I was born. That's why she died. Not in war, not in flight, but because they feared me." Kale's eyes darkened. "You have to tell Arvoxa." "No," Raya said quickly. "Not yet. If they learn what I truly am, some will try to destroy me." He didn't argue. Not because he agreed, but because he understood. Later that day, a call rang across the sky realm. A guardian scout returned, wounded. Her wing was torn nearly in half, and her face was pale with fear. "They're rising," she said. "The wind's hard faction. Varen leads them. They say the Skyfire child is the end of the ancient balance." Elora was the first to respond. "Where are they gathering?" "Near the Hollow Ridge, south of the Twilight Vale. They've built an altar, and they're calling the storm." Arvoxa's face was lined with worry. "He's summoning the Sky Maw." Gasps rippled across the courtyard. The Sky Maw wasn't a beast. It was a weapon. A living storm created long ago during the Guardian Wars. Once unleashed, it would devour anything in its path. Sky, earth or flesh. Raya stepped forward. "He means to destroy me." "No," Arvoxa said softly. "He means to destroy everything." Elora turned to Arvoxa. "If he succeeds in awakening the Maw, the barrier between realms will collapse. The human world will see us. They will try to control us. All will be lost." "We cannot let that happen," Arvoxa said. Then his eyes met Raya's. And we cannot face this without her. By dusk, a war council had formed. The sky realm, once a place of peace, now prepared for battle. Guardians sharpened their spears and wing blades. Arvoxa stood beside Elora, planning the formation. Kale was assigned to the second defense ring. And Raya. She was forbidden to join. "You're not ready," Elora said. "We cannot risk you falling into his hands." Raya's voice rose, desperate. "This is about me. He's calling the storm because of me. That's why we must protect you," Arvoxa added. But Raya no longer accepted silence. She slipped away that night, unseen, guided only by the voice that lived in her fire. Flew. She had never flown before. Not truly. Not with her own wings. But they came to her, white and golden, streaked with flames, borne from her back like they had always been there. As she launched into the open air, the clouds rushed past her like roaring rivers. Her wings burned but did not hurt. She rose, faster than wind, higher than thunder, toward the hollow ridge, toward Varen. The hollow ridge was nothing like the sky realm. It was twisted. Black clouds circled the broken stones. Lightning cracked constantly, but there was no rain. Strange figures stood in rows, guardians who had given up their vows. Their wings were tainted, veined with darkness. At the center stood Varen, arms outstretched, fire curling from his fingers. The altar before him pulsed with unnatural light. Above it, the storm coiled like a sleeping serpent. He turned the moment Raya arrived. "Oh, the child comes. You don't have to do this," Raya said. "But I already have." Varen lifted his hand, and the sky screamed. The maw stirred. Clouds shattered. Winds reversed. Light collapsed into shadow. A great mouth formed in the sky. Endless, jagged, alive. It began to devour the sky itself, turning stars into dust. Raya stood frozen, until Kale arrived. He had followed her without orders, without fear. "You don't face him alone." Then Arvoxa descended with Elora, leading the others into battle. The sky became a war. Swords clashed. Feathers burned. Wind turned red. Raya ran toward the altar. Varen met her there, eyes blazing. "You are not our savior. You are our doom." Raya didn't speak. She touched the altar, and all went white. Inside the light she heard a voice. Her mother's. "Your fire is not destruction. It is memory. Use it." Raya screamed. Flames erupted around her. The wind obeyed her will. The maw paused, and the altar cracked. Varen fell to his knees. "You should not exist." But she did. And now, she had awakened. The light did not vanish. Folded. Time slowed inside that brightness. Raya's feet no longer touched anything solid. Her body floated, weightless, while a gentle wind carried her deeper into what felt like the soul of the sky itself. Color she had never seen before swirled around her. Golden silver, sapphire flame, violet winds that sang as they passed. She could no longer hear the cries of war. She could only hear her own breath, and the voices of those who had come before her. Child of both realms. Fire born of love. You are the bridge they tried to bury. Then she saw them. Figures made of starlight and memory, with wings broader than mountains, eyes burning with galaxies. They stood in a great circle, and at the center of them stood her mother. Lina. Not younger. Not older. Aimless. Her face was neither smiling nor sad, but calm. Clear. Whole. "Raya," she said, her voice like warm rain on dry earth. "You've come further than I ever dreamed." Tears welled in Raya's eyes. "Are you real? I am memory. But memory lives. Raya's voice cracked. Why did they hate you? Why did they fear me? Ilyana stepped closer. They feared what we chose. Love without permission. Child without prophecy. Fire without chains. You were born not to follow the old laws, but to write the new. I don't understand how, Raya whispered. You will. But first you must remember who you are, not through blood or power but through choice. Suddenly, the circle of ancient guardians widened, and at the center of it all appeared a doorway made of fire and wind. Inside, images flickered. Her life as a baby swaddled in silver. Her mother running through a burning sky. Her father crying beside a river as he watched them vanish. The storm that took her. The earth that raised her. The boy who found her. The wing that saved her. She turned to Ilyana. What is this place? The deep flame. It remembers what others forget. But why now? Ilyana's gaze turned heavy. Because the maw has awakened, and unless you choose who you truly are, it will consume everything. You must close the storm from within. I don't know how to do that. Ilyana touched her heart. You already do. Raya looked down. There, glowing faintly, was the pendant her mother once wore. It beat with her own pulse. And suddenly she was no longer floating. The light broke, and she fell. Back into war. The hollow ridge was chaos. Arvoxa had taken to the skies, feathers burned and torn, wings fighting against the growing pull of the maw. Elara was bleeding, her sword crackling with wind energy as she pushed back the corrupted guardians who dared approach. Kale had found the remains of the altar and was using it as a shield to guard the wounded. Then a sound split the clouds. Raya. She descended in fire. Not consumed, but reborn. Her wings were no longer golden. They were white-hot flame, shifting shape as she moved. Her eyes glowed with the storm itself. And in her hands, the pendant had become a blade. Not made of metal, but of memory, forged from every forgotten promise. Varen looked up from the cliff where he stood. And for the first time he stepped back. You are not her daughter, he hissed. You are a curse. Raya landed in front of him, wings still blazing. I am everything you tried to destroy. Varen raised his staff and the maw above them roared, its mouth growing wider, its hunger stronger. Wind tore through the battlefield, sending guardians tumbling. The world tilted, but Raya walked forward. Every step she took sent pulses into the air, waves of flame that pushed the maw's power back inch by inch. She raised her hand and called it. Not the storm, the memory. From within her rose voices, of children lost to war, of mothers who died nameless, of fathers who searched and never found, of love never allowed. The wind answered, and the sky turned quiet. For a moment, then Varen lunged. He struck with all his fury, powered by fear and betrayal. His blade cracked through lightning. But Raya parried, her memory blade ringing like a bell. Sparks flew. Again and again he struck, faster than human eyes could follow. But Raya held her ground. Then Varen screamed, "You are a lie!" and stabbed her through the chest. Silence. Blood bloomed from Raya's armor. The battlefield froze. Kale shouted her name. But Raya did not fall. She looked down at the wound, then at Varen. "Maybe I am a lie," she said softly. Then fire burst from her back. "But I choose to live." She pulled his blade from her own body, tossed it aside, and placed her hand over her heart. The pendant flared once, blinding, and the maw stopped. The great mouth in the sky began to collapse inward, folding like paper in rain. Wind spiraled inward. Screams of ancient rage turned into sobs. And then nothing. The maw vanished. The sky cleared. The war was over. Varen collapsed to the ground, his face hollow, his powers drained. Raya knelt beside him. "Why did you do this?" she asked quietly. He looked at her with eyes that had once burned with purpose, now dim with regret. "I believed in order, in laws, in a world without chaos. And you were everything I couldn't control." Raya said nothing. She stood, her chest still bleeding but her steps firm. She turned toward her people. Not all knelt. Some stared afraid. Others turned their faces. But a few, Kale, Elora, even Arvoxa, walked forward. And knelt. Not in worship, but in respect. That night the stars returned. The sky realm began to heal. And Raya, once the forgotten child of broken oaths and stolen love, sat on the cliffs where her mother had once stood. Kale joined her. "Does it feel over?" he asked. She shook her head. "It feels like it's just beginning." He offered her a smile. "Then I guess we better stay ready." She looked at the sky. And for the first time, it looked like home. Though the war had ended, the air had not fully settled. The sky realm remained fragile, its harmony disrupted by wounds that still bled behind polite silences. Broken towers were rebuilt. Fallen feathers were swept from temple floors. But no one could erase what had happened. The storm had left cracks not only in the sky, but in the hearts of those who had watched their leaders turn against their own. Raya walked through those cracks every day. She no longer trained in isolation. She was no longer a stranger in the realm above. Yet even now, her presence stirred discomfort. She would pass by two guardians whispering and feel their eyes on her back. She would sit at council meetings and see the tension etched into every furrowed brow. "You see the way they look at you," Kale said one morning as they sparred by the Edgewind cliffs. Raya didn't meet his gaze. "They see the maw when they see me." "No," Kale said. "They see power. And power makes them question everything they thought was unshakable." Raya paused, blade in hand. "I didn't ask for it. That doesn't mean it doesn't belong to you." She looked down at her palms. No fire emerged now, not because it had left her, but because she had learned to hold it, contain it, listen to it. It was no longer a scream inside her. It was a breath, heartbeat. But as Kale stepped away to refill their flasks, Raya turned to the horizon and felt something shift. The sky darkened, not with clouds but with something stranger. The wind stopped moving. The air thickened. Then came the sound, low, rhythmic, almost like a chant, carried from below. Kale returned, sensing it too. "What is that?" Raya narrowed her eyes. Not from the sky. From the world below. The human world. They descended later that evening. Raya, Kale, and Elora, who insisted on coming despite her injuries. With Arvoxa's reluctant permission, they crossed through the Cloudvale Gate and followed the echoes down to the land where Raya had been found all those years ago. The village had changed. Once a forgotten place on the edge of forest and mist, it now burned with torches and strange sigils drawn in ash. People chanted in a circle. At the center of that circle stood a figure in dark robes, arms raised toward the heavens, speaking in a voice that did not belong to any man or woman. "They call it back," Elora whispered. "They call the storm again." "But how?" Kale asked. "The maw was sealed." Raya watched closer, her heart thudding. Then she saw it, the stone in the robed figure's hands. Small, glowing faintly violet, etched with familiar lines. "That's not just any stone," Raya breathed. "It's a sky shard. From the altar." "They must have taken it after the battle," Elora muttered. "Stolen it before the realm sealed again." Then the chanting grew louder. The wind began to howl. Not from above. From below. They moved in swiftly, disrupting the ritual. The torches blew out. The villagers scattered in fear. The figure in robes fought back, hurling shards of energy Raya had only ever seen in corrupted guardians. "You're not from this world," she hissed, blocking the attack with a wave of flame. The figure's hood fell. And beneath it was no face. Only darkness. Kale stepped in, sword raised. "What in Aloa's name?" Then it vanished. No explosion. No cry. Just a sudden gust, and the figure was gone, leaving behind the shard and the echo of its chant. Raya picked up the shard, feeling it vibrate in her palm. Elora crouched beside her. "That thing wasn't human. It wasn't guardian either," Raya said. Kale looked between them. "Then what was it?" "A shadow," Raya murmured. "One that doesn't belong in either world." Back in the sky realm, the elders gathered. Raya stood before them and laid the shard on the sky table. It was taken from the altar and used by something that wore a human shape. Elora spoke next. "It tried to open another maw." Arvoxa leaned forward, his face unreadable. "But why would a human, or anything else, want to unleash that horror again?" "Because something is watching us," Raya said. "And it doesn't care about our realms or our rules." Silence followed, until one voice broke it. "I've seen them." All heads turned. A young guardian named Leor stepped forward. He was one of the scouts stationed on the lower winds. His wings were scarred, his eyes bloodshot. "They walk in shadows. They carry pieces of us. They whisper in the voices of the dead. I saw them before the maw rose. I thought they were my nightmares." Arvoxa stood. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was afraid. Because no one listens to a half-trained wingguard who dreams of ghosts." Raya met his gaze. "I believe you." Leor nodded, then turned to leave. But just as he reached the door, he staggered. His hands gripped his head. His wings spasmed. A scream tore from his throat. And the shadows came. They erupted from his skin like smoke with claws. The council panicked. Guards surged forward. Raya held them back. "No. If you strike now, you kill him." She rushed to Leor's side, her hands burning with white fire. The shadows hissed at her touch, writhing and spitting, but they began to shrink, to retreat. And Leor fell into her arms, sobbing. "I didn't want to, I didn't let them in, they took me." Raya looked around at the council. "It's not over. It never was." Elora nodded grimly. The storm wasn't the end. It was a door. That night, Raya sat at the highest peak of the sky realm. Kale found her there, the wind cold, the stars faint. "You're not just the fire anymore," he said. She looked at him. "Then what am I?" "You're the lantern in the dark." She said nothing for a moment, then turned her face back to the horizon. "Then I'll need more fire." Far below, in the valley between realms, something stirred. Pulse. Flicker. The storm had ended. But the war against the shadow had just begun. The days that followed became a quiet unraveling. The sky realm, still healing, began to murmur with new fears. Whispers of shadows returning through cracks no one could see. Wind tunnels once serene now carried echoes that bent unnaturally, voices repeating themselves in the wrong tone. Birds of light, once thought eternal, fell from the skies in silence, their feathers soaked in dark mist. Raya felt it before the rest did. The balance was tipping again. Only this time it wasn't rage or ambition that threatened the skies, but something more ancient, something more patient. She woke often in the middle of the night, her dreams filled with flickers of a place she'd never seen. A path built from stone and wind, spiraling down beneath the clouds. A gate made of ribs and bone, half covered in fog, guarded by a voice that had no shape. In every dream, that voice whispered her name. Only once did she answer. And when she did, she saw her mother's eyes again, full of sorrow, not because she had died, but because she had failed to stop what was buried beneath the sky. That morning Raya called a meeting, not with the council, with the broken. She summoned those who had been touched by the shadows. Lur, the scout who still trembled in daylight. Yara, a wind-seer whose visions had begun to rot. 3 twin warriors who no longer slept without dreaming of teeth and echoing screams. They met beneath the skyforge, quiet, unnoticed. "We don't belong here anymore," Raya said. "We've seen too much, felt too much, and that makes us dangerous in their eyes." One of the twins, Jinan, crossed her arms. "Then why gather us? Because the answer isn't in this realm. It's below. In the place the guardians refuse to speak of." "The wound?" Yara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Raya nodded. Kale, standing beside her, added, "We found maps in the archives. Incomplete. Hidden under blank scrolls. There used to be a 13th gate. South of the Hollow Ridge. It was sealed centuries ago, before even our Vox's time. But the scrolls call it something else," Raya said. "The Forgotten Gate." No one spoke for a moment. Then Lior said, "If the shadows are returning through it, then we seal it," Raya said. "From the other side if we have to." They left that night. No grand farewell. No ceremony. Only the sound of wind cutting past feathers and cloth. Kale led the way, blade drawn. Jinan and her sisters moved like shadows themselves, barely making a sound. Yara guided them with whisper sight, her eyes glowing faintly. Lior flew above, watching for shifts in the sky. Raya moved in silence, but inside her the fire stirred. Not in anger, in preparation. The descent to the Forgotten Gate took them to a part of the world untouched by any map. The stars above dimmed. The wind grew still. Trees twisted unnaturally, roots forming spirals instead of branches. Even light bent strangely here, shadows appearing where no objects stood. "This place isn't sick," Yara whispered. "It's waiting." And then they found it. A canyon cut deep into the belly of the land. No sound reached the bottom. No light escaped. Stone pillars rose on either side, each one carved with forgotten symbols that shimmered only when not looked at directly. In the center an arch, twisted, blackened, built not by hands, but by something that remembered hands. The Forgotten Gate. Jinan stepped forward, her sword pulsing. "It's locked from the inside." Kel checked the edges. "Raya, there's no seam. No mechanism." Raya closed her eyes and listened, not with her ears, with a fire. She placed her hand on the center of the gate, and something moved. Not the stone, the world. A click echoed, not outside but in her chest. The pendant she had carried since birth began to pulse again, faster now. Then a wind rose from beneath them, cold, sour, ancient, and the gate opened, not with a rumble, with a breath. A thin line split the arch in half, revealing a stairwell descending into nothingness. No one spoke. They just followed. Inside, the world lost shape. Walls became veins of stone and starlight. The air didn't move, yet felt like it pressed against skin. The stairs went on for what felt like hours, though none of them tired. The light from their torches never flickered. Time stretched. Then, suddenly they reached a chamber. It was circular, gigantic, and filled with mirrors. Hundreds of them. Each one stood independently, hovering slightly off the ground. Each reflected not just their images, but different versions of themselves. In one, Raya was cloaked in shadow, wings torn. In another, Kale was kneeling before a black throne. In one mirror, the three sisters fought each other to the death. Raya stepped slowly, watching her reflections. None smiled. None looked peaceful. Yara trembled. This is not memory. This is not prophecy. It's temptation, Lior said. It shows what could be. If we falter. Then, without warning, one mirror shattered. It wasn't touched. Simply screamed. And the chamber shook. From the darkness beyond the mirrors, something began to emerge. Not walking. Slithering. Folding in on itself. A shape made of human features. Eyes where hands should be. Mouths that breathed mist. It whispered. You opened the gate. Kale stepped in front of Raya. Who are you? We are the price. The creature split. One form became two. Two became four. Until the chamber filled with these crawling, echoing shadows, each one carrying a fragment of someone they had once been. The warriors readied their blades. But Raya raised her hand. No, they're not the enemy. Not yet. She stepped forward. The shadows hissed. She lowered her pendant to the stone floor. The fire pulsed once. And all the shadows stopped. Your maw is gone, Raya said quietly. But your wound remains. One shadow moved closer. Its voice was 1,000 voices. Then take our pain. Raya didn't flinch. She opened her arms. The shadows surged toward her. Kale cried out. The others moved to protect her. But she held her ground. And the fire consumed them. Not with destruction, but with memory. Shadow became smoke. Each scream became a whisper. Each whisper became a name. And in moments, they were gone. All except one. Small shadow, child-sized, stepped forward. Its face was hers. Raya blinked, then bent down. Are you me? The shadow nodded, then held up a hand. Inside it a key. Not metal, but light. Path forward. Raya took it. And suddenly, the mirrors shattered. All of them. The chamber collapsed. And the stairwell behind them disappeared. There was no way back. Only forward. Through the dark. Toward whatever waited beyond the forgotten gate. They had crossed beyond the place where the sky ended. There was no more light. No more wind. No boundary between ground and air. Only weightless nothingness that pressed against the skin like silence turned into stone. The companions hovered in that void. Each tethered only by the will not to fall, not to dissolve. Raya held the key of light in her hand. Pulsed. Not brightly, but steadily. Each pulse sent waves into the dark, like a heartbeat echoing through a world that had long forgotten sound. Kale floated beside her, breath unsteady. Where are we now? Yara reached into the dark with her whisper sight and began to cry. Not from fear. From recognition. This is the before, she said. Before the skies. Before the gates. Before the laws. Jinan gripped her blades. Then who built the gate? No one, Raya said. It was never built. It was remembered. They moved through the nothingness, following the pulses from the key, until at last they saw it. A platform suspended in black. Massive. Wound in rings of bone and crystal. And in the center. Throne. Me. Cracked. But still breathing. Every few seconds, the stone exhaled, releasing a thin mist that carried with it memories not their own. Child crying. A war drum. A whisper of forgiveness. Scream. Lullaby. What is this place? Kale whispered. And then the voice returned. Not from ahead. from within. You have come, child of both winds and fire. Raya turned slowly. The mist gathered behind her and took form. Figure tall as sky, yet weightless. Cloaked in robes that shimmered like dusk. Its face ever shifting, reflecting each of theirs in turn. Keeper. The true guardian of the boundary between worlds. The one that had fallen when the first maw opened. You are not dead, Raya said. No, the keeper said. I am undone. Kale stepped forward. You let the maw rise. I was not strong enough to stop it. You let my people die. I did not choose their death, said the keeper. But I bore witness to it. Raya walked toward the throne. And now the gate weakens. The realms fracture. The old ones stir. And I have no form with which to stand. You want me to take your place, Raya said. The keeper did not deny it. You carry the fire that binds. The memory that heals. The pain that teaches. I am not asking. I am returning. The key in Raya's hand flared. Jinan stepped forward. If she accepts, what happens to us? The keeper looked at her. You return to sky or to soil. But never both. Not again. Silence followed. Yara touched Raya's shoulder. Don't do this because you feel chosen. Do this because you know the end will need someone who remembers how it began. Lior the scarred scout fell to his knees. I've seen what happens if no one stands. Kale stepped close, voice low. I lost my faith once. When the sky fell. But standing here beside you. I've never believed more than I do now. Raya looked into the dark. Then back at the throne. Then at the keeper, whose shape now flickered, fading with each breath. What happens if I fail? She asked. The keeper's eyes, momentarily her own reflection, answered with a single word. Oblivion. She stepped forward, placed the key into the throne, and the world broke. Light returned, not as sunrise but as flood. Every realm was touched at once. The sky realm turned gold. The human world trembled as mountains wept rivers long sealed. The forgotten gate collapsed, its bones crumbling into ash. And from the center of the nothingness, she rose. Raya. No longer just child. No longer just flame. She was keeper now. Cloaked in stardust, her wings woven from memories. Her eyes held both storm and silence. Kale watched from a distant peak. She did it. But below, the shadows still moved. They had not been destroyed, only scattered. And now, sensing the loss of their ancient jailer, they regrouped. Raya, high above, felt them stir. And this time she did not retreat. She descended. Not with fury, with purpose. Across the realm, her voice reached the broken gates of the world. Come forth. I am the keeper. And I remember you. The shadows attacked in waves, taking shape as creatures of despair. Wolves made of forgotten guilt, serpents of betrayal, giants built from unresolved pain. They howled, shrieked, laughed in voices from her past. She answered each with fire. But not the fire of destruction. The fire of truth. Each flame revealed a memory. Each memory dissolved a lie. The shadow serpent tried to bind her with her mother's final breath. But Raya embraced it, held it, and released it. The giant of pain tried to bury her in silence. But Raya opened her mouth and sang. The lullaby from her dreams. The one her mother used to hum. The wolves tried to scatter her into wind, but she gathered herself and with one blazing cry, sent them dissolving into light. Kale joined her in the final stand, blade to blade. Beside him, Jinan and her sisters fought in perfect rhythm. Lior held back the tide at the edge of the sky. Yara wept as she chanted, her voice threading between realms, binding the last wounds. It was not a battle. It was a remembering. And by the time the final shadow dissolved, the world had changed. In the days that followed, no throne stood in the sky, because Raya walked among them. She visited both the sky realm and the human villages, not as a god, not as a queen, as a keeper of balance, of memory, and peace. Children born after the storm grew up hearing her story. Some called her the fire guardian, others the skyborn. But those who had seen her face, heard her voice, fought beside her. They called her what she had become, the keeper of the realms. And though she never sat upon a throne, she ruled in the quiet moments, in every warm breeze, in every healing tear, and in the stillness between heartbeats where pain once lived. There was now light. Dear listeners, every story holds a deeper lesson, and so does this one. The tale of Raya, an orphan saved by a giant eagle who turned out to be the guardian of the Sky Kingdom, is more than just a fantasy adventure. It is a reflection of hope rising from despair, a reminder that pain is not meant to be buried, but transformed into strength for the future. We are taken on a journey where loss does not break a person, but becomes the spark for a greater purpose. Raya grew not because she was the strongest, but because she chose to listen, to remember, and to forgive. She faced not only enemies outside, but the fears and shadows within her soul. From this story, we learn that being a guardian does not mean having great power, but the courage to face the past and protect what is good. Each of us can be a guardian of kindness, of honesty, of hope in our homes, our friendships, and within ourselves. And in a world that often feels dark, the courage to light even the smallest flame can be the greatest victory of all. It is important to note that this story is entirely fictional, created through imagination and written to feel real, with the intention of inspiring, motivating, and offering life lessons. We hope this story has opened a new perspective, strengthened your spirit, and given comfort to those who may feel alone in their journey. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or helped you see things differently, please leave a comment below. Let us know where you're listening from and which part of the story meant the most to you. And if you enjoyed this story, please support this channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing so we can keep bringing you more emotional and meaningful stories that speak to the soul. See you in the next story, dear friends. Keep your heart open, and never stop believing in the light that lives inside you.